NFL executives obtained Gruden's emails as part of an investigation into the misconduct of the Washington football team. Those emails represented a small fraction of the 650,000 emails gathered in that investigation and predated Gruden's hiring by the Raiders and occurred at a time when he was no longer at the Raiders. Those emails were deemed so confidential by the NFL that they refused to release them in response to a congressional request. And between June 2021 and October 2021, defendants took no action whatsoever with respect to those emails. On October 7th, 2021, Jon Gruden was the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders in first place in the division. And then on October 8th, 2021, defendants leaked a selection of these emails to the press and to the Wall Street Journal. Those emails have never been made public. We haven't introduced them into the record. We've seen them only as a reflection of what the journalists reported. In the next few days, our complaint alleges that NFL executives and Roger Goodell himself communicated with the Raiders and demanded that they fire him. They pressured the Raiders to fire him. And when the Raiders didn't, defendants continued to threaten that more documents would be leaked until Mr. Gruden was fired. There is a stunning admission in the motion practice submitted by defendants. In between October 8th and October 11th, 2021, they concede that they directly provided Gruden's emails and summaries of these emails to the Raiders. Despite their overall position, which is that we didn't do this, but we could have if we wanted to, but we definitely didn't do it, but we'd be privileged to leak these emails if we wanted to. They've admitted in their motion practice that they had the emails conveniently prepared between October 8th and October 11th, 2021, and provided those and summaries of Gruden's emails directly to the Raiders, Jon Gruden's employer, as part of their communications demanding that the Raiders fire Jon Gruden. When the Raiders still had not fired Gruden on October 11th, 2021, the defendants leaked more documents to the New York Times and continued that pressure until he ultimately was forced to resign. They want to make this case about the content of the emails, but it's not just about the emails themselves. It's not even about the ones that were released. It's about their threats to the Raiders to continue releasing more emails, whether they're from this archive of 650,000 emails or not, until they got their way and until they intimidated, threatened the Raiders in order to force them to fire Mr. Gruden.
And I am not going to get into the content of these emails. They are not fit to be repeated in a public courtroom. I think no reasonable person can conclude that that is not conduct detrimental to the league.
But it was years ago. It was before you signed this contract.
That is correct, which is to say that the emails were sent before he signed the contract.
As much as defendants try to argue that this case is about Mr. Gruden's emails, it's not. The validity of those emails, the content of those emails is not going to be at issue in this case. What is going to be at issue is defendants' tortious conduct, leaking those emails to the press selectively, and then demanding that Mr. Gruden be fired by the Raiders, and threatening to release emails that we haven't even seen, that may not even exist.
The mere fact that the NFL did not leak all of the emails involved with the or did not release all of the emails involved with the WFT investigation. I didn't hear Mr. Hosmer-Henner to suggest today that the eradication of racism, sexism, and homophobia would not be a valid justification if the doctrine of privilege is triggered with regard to the claims at issue here. And again, there's really no explanation why, as a matter of law, the NFL would have a duty to Gruden not to disclose these emails. There's a suggestion in the briefing that there's some sort of natural duty, but there's simply no legal support for that.
So this court is faced with a determination of sending this case to the very person that plaintiff is attempting to sue. But defendants argue that that opinion is irrelevant, that your opinion is irrelevant. The only opinion that matters is Commissioner Goodell's. This is about whether Jon Gruden can present his claims at all, about whether he can present them in a neutral forum in front of someone who he's not directly suing, about whether he has the right to obtain any discovery, because the NFL and Commissioner Goodell can shut that down at their sole discretion. And the precedent created by such a decision, which would be new precedent, would be so remarkable that going forward, the commissioner of the NFL could refer any dispute by any employee, by any cheerleader, by any worker in the Washington football team to arbitration based on their unilateral opinion that it constitutes conduct detrimental to the league.
Former Raiders head coach Jon Gruden won today in court against the NFL. Both of the NFL's motion to dismiss the lawsuit and their motion to move the lawsuit to arbitration failed. They took a big L today, and shockingly, Gruden won today. David hit a punch against Goliath. Audrey, what was your main takeaway right away from this ruling?
My main takeaway was that going into this, I was fairly cynical. Maybe that says more about me than the lawsuit, but I did not think this would necessarily go well. And after watching the whole proceeding this morning, I'm like, well, I don't think the NFL, I don't think they ever thought they were going to win with these motions. Maybe that's why they delayed this hearing for how many months? Since February.
Like
it's been delayed 2 times.
2 to 3 times. And by the way, this was a bench ruling by Judge Nancy Allf. Mike Florio of PFT commented on this even more. You know, she ruled from the bench, which means she didn't even go into the chamber, into the office to think about it. Based on what was sent to the court prior to the hearing, she was able to easily determine that the NFL doesn't have a shot to dismiss this case or move it into arbitration.
Right.
Crazy stuff.
Right. Yeah. And of course, the plaintiff, which is Gruden, right, bringing this lawsuit, their whole case was that the content of the emails don't matter. They're completely irrelevant here. That the point is the NFL's conduct and how they went about removing Jon Gruden. Namely, leaking selectively a couple of emails that actually the emails themselves weren't even leaked. It's like tidbits, like a sentence or two from an email. Maybe the journalists themselves at Washington Post and New York Times haven't even seen the emails. We don't know. Apparently, It's just Roger Goodell. It may be Mary Jo White, the people that ran the WFT investigation. However, the whole point of the plaintiff's suit was that they selectively leaked these emails to the press. When the defense, when the NFL, representing obviously the NFL, tried to dispute that, they tried to cast some sort of doubt on that connection, that the NFL themselves are behind this leak. But then, of course, the plaintiff comes back and says, between October 8th and October 11th, Roger Goodell himself contacted Mark Davis and said, if you don't get rid of Gruden, more emails will come out. How do you do that unless you yourself are leaking them?
And that's what we learned today, is that the NFL and Roger Goodell sent a summary and let the Raiders know they had a package of emails ready to go and release unless Mark Davis disciplined Jon Gruden. Mark Davis did not discipline Jon Gruden. And one thing that was really interesting is that he also settled with Jon Gruden immediately after Gruden was forced to resign. And what Jon Gruden and his legal team argued is that the settlement is just between Gruden and the club. Gruden and the franchise and the Raiders has nothing to do with the relationship to the NFL at large. And that was a really interesting thing to learn in this case. And I want to get your thoughts on this, which was like basically the NFL's defense here in particular was that this needs to be, they started off saying this needs to be forced into arbitration. They said straight up that Roger Goodell, the commissioner, according to the NFL's constitution, has to handle this issue, right? This has to go into arbitration, and he gets to make a determination because the conduct by Jon Gruden, according to the NFL, was detrimental to the league. Therefore, the commissioner has to decide on this particular issue. But that just sets a bad precedent that Gruden's legal team talked about, right?
Well, the main issue was that any of the proceedings, according to the rules with the NFL, their own rules, to terminate someone or to bring about some kind of disciplinary action against someone who's engaged in some sort of conduct detrimental to the league. We hear this phrase a lot, right? That none of those steps were actually taken, because how was Gruden actually removed? He wasn't removed through some kind of NFL sort of a hearing or some kind of like disciplinary hearing, right? There was a selective leak, again, of a sentence or two from emails out of 650,000 that are completely unrelated to Jon Gruden and the Raiders to the press. And clearly the conduct of the NFL was on trial today, and they did not win. Thank God.
Right. And it's funny because the NFL was basically saying, even though Gruden is suing NFL and Goodell and the NFL should be able to determine whether or not they engage in wrongful behavior and treatment towards Jon Gruden. So it's basically that makes absolutely no sense. And Gruden's
conflict of interest would be the phrase there. Yes.
And and Gruden's legal team said, like, what precedent does this set? Like, it sets a precedent where anybody who wants to sue the NFL, if they had been an employee of the NFL at any moment in their life, even decades down the road, would have to have the NFL, decide on this through arbitration, which is actually absolutely ridiculous. And one key thing that I want to get your thoughts about is the fact that Gruden's legal team brought up an interesting point, which was, the court has never seen the emails. Gruden has never seen the emails. It has never been submitted. So how could they determine that the emails engage in conduct detrimental to the league when nobody has seen the emails?
Well, of course, Gruden has, from his private email account, which is where they were lifted. By the way, a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's a public account. No, Bruce Allen's account was a team account, but Gruden's was a private account.
Right.
But they say because it was sent to a team account, then he doesn't have any expectation of privacy. You can dispute that. That's another issue. However, Gruden obviously would have access to them in his own archived email. But of course, the lawyers themselves have never had access to the emails in question as a kind of exhibit, a courtroom exhibit, some kind of evidentiary evidence. That's
right, exactly, and right, and then another thing too.
They've never been submitted to court as evidence. Is the point?
They'd never been submitted to court as evidence. And what's really funny, too, is the defense of the NFL, their lawyer, he was talking about the releasing of the emails, and he had a Freudian slip where he, instead of saying the NFL released the emails, he ended up saying leak.
The mere fact that the NFL did not leak all of the emails involved with the or did not release all of the emails involved with the WFT investigation.
And I just had to, been like, okay, is he accidentally saying the truth, and had to quickly correct himself. That was a really funny thing to see there.
Yeah, and I just want to correct one thing I said. Obviously, they haven't been submitted as evidence to court because it hasn't gone to court yet. That's what the whole point of today was, the preliminary motions, right, before it actually goes to court. And of course, the NFL will do everything they can to try and keep it from court. Brian McCarthy today, NFL spokesman, said that they're obviously going to be appealing this decision. Right. The NFL will do everything within their power to keep this from going to court, keep this from being public. It's interesting. There hasn't been a lot of media coverage of this. I mean, I feel like I didn't even necessarily want to have to cover this story, but I feel like we're the only ones covering it sometimes.
And here's the thing, though. This is going to go to trial. We're going to get the full Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing. I think the probability is high because, like they said earlier, it was a bench ruling. The judge straight up said, boom, from the bench, you got no case here, NFL. You can't dismiss this. That means that this will likely go to the trial, and the NFL will fail in their appeal against Jon Gruden's lawsuit. It could go all the way up to the Supreme Court, and it's going to be very interesting to see. And I want to say, Judge Nancy Allf, she had an interesting moment where when the defense of the NFL was talking, she clarified. She made him clarify that the emails were sent when Jon Gruden was not an employee, and she made sure that he acknowledged that on the record. Really intense moment in that courtroom, I will say.
But it was years ago. It was before he signed this contract.
That is correct, which is to say that the emails were sent before he signed the contract.
Yeah, I think it was clear that the defense didn't have a leg to stand on. And maybe, again, that's why this can was kicked down the road for so long. That maybe they were testing the plaintiff's legal resources, ultimately, financial legal resources.
Right, and that's what they're also saying is these emails are true. And Gruden's defense was saying, we don't know if these emails are true because no one has even seen them. And even if everything they said about Gruden, everything he said was 100% true, he's this, well, that still has nothing to do with the fact that the NFL selectively leaked this email and also didn't listen to Congress. And Gruden's defense brought this up. Congress said, hey, we want to see all 650,000 of these emails. We encourage the NFL to release them. The NFL didn't listen to Congress, and now they're saying, well, these emails are true. Well, if it's so true, why not release all 650,000? And like Gruden's defense said, we would see if Gruden is an aberration, right? And It makes Gruden look bad when you selectively only leak his contents. If we had all 650,000 and we saw that a lot of these other coaches and GMs kind of talk in this particular way, then can you really target Gruden there? And you can't. And that's why they had to selectively leak Gruden's emails and try to screw him over. Basically.
Right. I mean, the plaintiff was a really interesting point when they just said, actually, these emails are so confidential that they haven't even done any kind of redaction of names, kind of sort of release of some of them, right? In the process of this WFT investigation, Mike Florio in particular has pointed that out. I guess they aren't familiar with the concept of redaction here.
Right.
Which, how do you believe that? Obviously, no one should. But yeah, so these emails are so confidential, they can't release anything involving anyone except Jon Gruden. And then, by the way, Jeff Pash and Bruce Allen a couple days later.
Right.
And I wanted to say one thing that you brought up on your previous Gruden video. Go and check that out. It's right there. You did mention that, of course, you were being a little cynical with respect to Nancy Allf, and you thought, well, maybe if she received some sort of partisan funding, which many judges do, especially federal judges, that would somehow mean that she has maybe a particular bias with one party, or you try to bring the politics into it. But I think some people had some issues with that because I don't think that we really made the point as clearly as we could have, which I will make now, which is that Jeff Pash, league attorney, right, still actually employed with them, Bruce Allen, and then Jon Gruden are the only three to have anything from these emails leaked. And all three, from the leaked emails, all three made disparaging remarks about the Democratic Party.
Right.
And so this isn't us trying to bring politics
It was a
into this.
prediction.
We're just looking at it and we're going, okay, so maybe all these three guys are Republicans, and so they have a
Right.
target on their back. I don't give a shit.
We were predicting.
I'm not a member of either party. I'm indifferent to it all.
I was predicting, yeah.
However, it does look like there is some sort of political bias at play here or behind this cancellation of Gruden or trying to remove him. Who knows? It's all kind of speculation. But I found that interesting that the only three people to catch any flack with these selected media leaks of these emails are people who sounded like Republicans and said mean things about Democrats.
But but either way, what we learned today, we made a prediction. What we learned today is Judge Nancy Allf said, this would be unprecedented. This would be unprecedented if we let the defense of this lawsuit decide whether or not it goes into arbitration, and would let them decide, the outcome of this arbitration. This would be completely unprecedented. She could not rule in favor of the NFL. That was part of the reasoning that she brought up. And Jon Gruden was actually spoken to after the hearing, but Cindy Gruden took him away, and he said, we are going to let the process take care of itself. Good luck to the Raiders, and go Raiders. I don't have anything else to comment on. The process will take care of itself, and he'll be hanging out with some friends tonight. So good victory for Jon Gruden. Hope that he celebrates, and I do like the fact that the Raiders are still employing Deuce Gruden, so there's still a connection there, and it really made me happy to know that there seems to be a friendship and a relationship that is still there between Mark Davis and Jon Gruden. People speculated and predicted that, hey, we don't know which side Mark Davis is really on, but based on how he handled the settlement with Jon Gruden immediately after he resigned, based on Gruden's attitude towards the Raiders, and based on the fact that Deuce Gruden is still employed by the Raiders, I am glad to say that Jon Gruden's still a Raider in his own way. Once a Raider, always a Raider, and he still has a good relationship with Mark Davis. That was great to see.
I think anyone with common sense would be like, well, the Davis and the Gruden relationship, well, sounds like Davis's hand was forced. We know that Goodell contacted him between October 8th and 11th and basically said, do what I'm telling you to do, or else. Just a total gangster move.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a liability in court. Hopefully the NFL is not quite as immune to any kind of legal action as they think they are and historically have been.
And I will say that Gruden's lawyer did a fantastic job today, and I cannot wait to see what happens in the future. And we're going to keep doing coverage on this. We're going to keep talking about this. And I do not believe Gruden will settle. There's the option that Jon Gruden will settle. I don't think he got to this point to settle.
I don't think this is about money.
And it's not about the money, right?
Yeah.
It's about the fact that he's not able to be the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. That's what's really... And he's not allowed to be a coach in football. And that was part of the thing, is that, a contract between the NFL and the Raiders and Gruden, that has to be dealt with arbitration in the NFL. No, because Gruden also lost contracts between other companies, sponsorships and stuff. This is not just about the NFL, his contract with the NFL. This is bigger than that. I'm glad that Gruden won today, and I cannot wait to see what happens in the future.
I want to say one last point here, which is that I've seen the tide turn with some fans online, where namely there's a kind of historical revisionism happening here, a kind of Orwellian memory hole situation where they, all say, some people say, of course, Gruden was a bad coach, et cetera, et cetera. Right. That is exactly what Goodell would want Raiders fans to believe, which is that the team is going to start winning now because they got rid of Gruden.
Yeah, with Kaepernick at QB.
Yeah, but I'll remind everyone, we're actually at the top of the division when this happened.
And
who was at the bottom of the division? The Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah. So, any kind of forgetting, sort of like collective forgetting that people are having. I mean, I think it's ultimately because they feel powerless anyway. And so it's like, why not let Roger Goodell railroad their team and their head coach and just kind of bend over and take it? Right. And I guess I understand the rationality of that, because if you can't find it, you might as well join it. But please don't do that, Raider Nation. Please don't give in to this shit. You can still cheer on McDaniel, Ziegler, the new front office, this team, without completely throwing Jon Gruden under the bus along with Roger Goodell.
And look, you want to know who's also cheering on McDaniels and the Raiders? Jon Gruden.
Yeah.
He said, go Raiders.
Yes.
He's still a Raiders fan.
Yes.
So he's able to separate this. And this is mainly what this is about, is just like what the judge talked about and what the Gruden's defense talked about, is like, this just sets a precedent where if Gruden doesn't win here, then anybody who ever tries to sue the NFL, what if this happens to Josh McDaniels, right? Right when Josh McDaniels was hired, I said, hide your emails, right? Yeah. What precedent does it set? No, we can't have this happen. We can't have it where the NFL and Goodell could just grab some emails and totally cancel
Sheer
any employee
gangsterism,
of the NFL.
sheer corruption. I totally agree. You should not be cheering on this level of corruption and gangsterism. It was really despicable.
Right.
Regardless of the content of the emails.
Either way, like this
It's a
video.
whole other discussion.
Right. Either way, like this video if you haven't already. We're going to give you more updates on this case non-stop whenever anything occurs. Subscribe to this channel. Ring the bell to get notifications. This is Wi-Fi Willie of the Raiders Rundown.
And I'm Hotspot Audrey.
Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.